from the Food and Agricultural Program. He will brief you on food price inflation and what we can expect from the upcoming State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World Report 2025. Tomorrow, our guest will be Margot van der Velden, the World Food Programme's Regional Director for West and Central Africa. She will brief us on the humanitarian situation in Nigeria. This morning, I'm sure you all heard the Secretary General deliver a special address entitled A Moment of Opportunity, Supercharging the Clean Energy Age. During his remarks, he underscored that already the carbon emissions saved by solar and wind globally are almost equivalent to what the whole European Union produces a year. But he said that this transformation is fundamentally about energy security and people's security, and that is about smart economics. The Secretary General said the energy transition is unstoppable, but it is not yet fast enough or fair enough. His full remarks were shared with you. Later on, the Secretary General went to the Security Council chamber where he spoke on multilateralism, and he warned that around the world we see an utter disregard for international law, including international human rights law, international refugee law, international humanitarian law, and the UN Charter itself, all of this without any accountability. He drew attention to what he called a horror show in Gaza, where malnourishment is soaring, starvation is knocking on every door, and now we're seeing the last gasp of a humanitarian system built on humanitarian principles. The Secretary General said he is appalled that UN premises have been struck, among them facilities for UNOPS and the World Health Organization, including WHO's main warehouse, as you all just heard just moments ago from Dr. Rick Pieperkorn. This is all despite the parties having all of the locations and coordinates for UN premises. He reminded the Council that these premises, like all civilian sites, are inviolable and must be protected under international humanitarian law without any exception. He noted that today marks 3 years since the signing of the Black Sea Initiative and the Memorandum of Understanding with the Russian Federation, efforts that show that we can achieve what we can achieve through mediation and the good offices of the United Nations, even during the most challenging moments. The Secretary General added that we must work to ensure that the Security Council reflects the world of today, not the world of 80 years ago when the United Nations was created. The Security Council should be made more representative of today's geopolitical realities, and we must continue improving the working methods of this Council to make it more inclusive, to make it more transparent and efficient and accountable, he told Council members. Now, turning to the situation in the Gaza Strip, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that intense hostilities are continuing without any let-up, as does the rapid collapse of the last lifelines keeping people alive. Earlier today, local health authorities said that in just past 24 hours, more than a dozen children and adults died from hunger. Hospitals have admitted people in a state of severe exhaustion caused by lack of food, and others are said to be collapsing in the streets. This is on top of continued reports of people being shot, killed, or injured while simply trying to find food, which, as you know, is only being allowed into Gaza in far too small quantities. In too many cases where UN teams are permitted by Israel to collect supplies from closed compounds near Gaza's crossings, civilians approaching these trucks come under fire despite repeated assurances that troops would not engage or be present. This cannot be stressed enough that this unacceptable pattern is the opposite of what facilitating humanitarian operations should look like. Absolutely no one should have to risk their lives for food. Hospitals have been overwhelmed with over 2,000 trauma injuries in the past 4 days alone. That's what local authorities are telling us. Some have reported not having enough intravenous fluids, and due to lack of fuel, the Nasser Medical Complex and the oxygen units supplying hospitals in the south are at risk of shutting down. And I think I won't go into the details of WHO operations, which you've just heard about. Yesterday, I think you asked us how many people have fled the area under displacement order in the Deir el-Balah area. Well, about 1,000 families have fled within the first hours. We don't have a reliable current estimate. That's because our teams who normally track population movements are themselves being impacted. Some have been newly displaced, others remain under heavy bombardment and face communications blackout. Colleagues on the ground tell us that, like everyone else in Gaza, they are hungry and they too are exhausted. They can only confirm that many people have fled under fire. Many others stayed despite the massive risks because there's simply just nowhere safe for them to go. About 88% of the Gaza Strip is either subject to displacement orders or located within Israeli militarized zones. The 12% that remains is already overcrowded and underserved. However, as we said yesterday, our colleagues remain in Deir el-Balah, which is our hub for humanitarian operations, with staff spread across a number of premises, all of which, as I've said before, have been shared with all of the parties. And I think most of you must have seen this morning that in a statement issued by Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, she said she deeply regretted the decision of the United States to withdraw once again from the organization she leads. She added that in the past years, UNESCO has stepped up efforts to take action wherever the agency's mission could contribute to peace. And of course, the Secretary General joins her in deeply regretting the decision by the United States. Turning to Sudan, I can tell you that we and our partners have revised and scaled up plans to respond to the overwhelming needs of 380,000 displaced people in the locality of Tawila in North Darfur. This includes 327,000 human beings, mostly women and children, who fled the famine-stricken Zamzam camp and surrounding areas following the outbreak of hostilities there in mid-April. Our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that this updated plan aims to increase assistance over the next 3 months with a focus on food, healthcare, water, sanitation, shelter, and protection. An estimated 120 million United States dollars is urgently needed to implement the plan and to scale up the response. The health situation in North Darfur, as we've been telling you, is deteriorating rapidly. Our humanitarian partners warn that cholera, measles, malaria, and trauma cases are surging in Tawila, as well as El Fasher and Kebkebia. All are located in North Darfur State. And I think you, Edie, yesterday asked me for information on cholera cases in El Fasher. Specifically, we're following up with our partners to get more details. But it's important to note that the widespread internet outage in the El Fasher area and a lack of rapid diagnostic tests are severely hindering the surveillance of cholera, while insecurity has forced the closure of over 32 health facilities there. Critical shortages of vaccine, essential medicine, and surgical supplies are pushing the health system to the brink, leaving thousands without access to care that they need to stay alive. Meanwhile, displacement continues to take a deadly toll on civilians who are trying to find safety. In South Darfur, markets are reeling from sharp price increase driven by flooding and seasonal rivers that have cut off supply routes from Chad and northern state. And just to take a closer look in Nyala, the state capital, in Nyala, the state capital, the price of a 50-kilogram sack of sugar has reportedly risen by 21% in just 1 month, while wheat flour prices have jumped 31%, deepening food insecurity for already vulnerable families. That's the information based on our own assessment and that of our partners. Meanwhile, we remain deeply concerned over escalating violence in the Kordofan region. In West Kordofan state, at least 5 civilians were killed and several others injured in drone strikes on fuel markets in Al-Fula and Abu Zaba towns yesterday. That's what local reports are telling us. Massive fires destroyed both markets, striking panic, obviously, among the population. We urgently call yet again for a cessation of hostilities, for the protection of civilians and humanitarian personnel, unimpeded access across conflict lines and border, and increased international support to address the spiraling humanitarian needs across Sudan. And just south of the border, in South Sudan, another dire humanitarian situation which goes underreported. Our colleagues at the World Food Program tell us that this year, over 2 million of the most vulnerable people were reached with much-needed food assistance in the country. WFP estimates that the population of South Sudan, that is half of the 7.7 million people are facing severe hunger. Of those, 83,000 people are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. Just to flag that the WFP Deputy Executive Director, Carl Scout, just finished a visit to South Sudan a couple of days ago. He stressed that WFP has the capacity to deliver even in the most remote and challenging environments, but without sufficient funding in a period of peace, the agency's hands are tied. And in the DRC, our colleagues, our peacekeepers in MONUSCO are telling us that they intervened yesterday in Lopa, in the Ituri province, to protect civilians after heavily armed members of the Codeco militia entered the area. Gunfire broke out near the peacekeepers' mobile base in the area as Codeco fighters arrived, seeking a confrontation with the peacekeepers. The violence quickly escalated, resulting in looting and destruction. Despite the violence, 6 civilians, including a priest, were safely evacuated. The UN peacekeeping mission continues to coordinate with Congolese national forces and local leaders to address the ongoing violence and to ensure the protection of civilians in the area. And from turning to Afghanistan, Tom Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, today allocated $10 million from our own Central Emergency Response Fund to scale up life-saving assistance at the country's borders. As you know, there's been a surge of returns from Iran in recent weeks. The new funding will help expand support for the most vulnerable, including women and children, as they arrive in their areas of return. During the first 12 days of July alone, some 339,000 people returned from Iran to Afghanistan, bringing the total number to 1.1 million this year so far. Families account for more than 60% of the total returns from Iran. 43% of those returning are children under the age of 18. This includes a growing number of unaccompanied and separating children, which is obviously raising a lot of concerns. Our humanitarian colleagues note the majority of the recent returnees are traveling onwards to urban centers of Herat and in Kabul, and many need urgent support. The new arrivals are also putting further pressure on already very vulnerable host communities, as services are already limited and resources scarce in many areas where people are returning. We, along with our partners, are responding to the escalating needs wherever and whenever possible. So far this year, nearly 600,000 people have received food assistance at the border upon their return, with more than 500,000 receiving health support. However, additional funding is sorely needed. Halfway through the year, the humanitarian needs and response plan for Afghanistan is less than a quarter funded, with a funding gap of over 1.8 billion United States dollars. We need cash, and we need it urgently. And in Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues report that hostilities yesterday into the early hours of today killed at least 5 civilians, including a child, and injured 76 others, including 4 children. That's what local authorities are telling us. Widespread damage was reported across the country, with several residential buildings and civilian infrastructure destroyed or damaged. Essential services were also disrupted. Meanwhile, strikes in Sumy and Donetsk regions in the east continue to drive displacement. OCHA warns that the humanitarian situation in the town of Pokrovsk and nearby villages in Donetsk continue as the fighting intensifies. Authorities say all critical infrastructure there has been destroyed and about 1,400 people remain, most of them taking shelter in basements. Local authorities maintain a few water points and distributing food and medicine, but fuel delivery is impossible and the last shops are expected to close soon. Authorities are urging civilians to evacuate, although these efforts are highly constrained and carried out by specialized police in armored vehicles. Our humanitarian partners are supporting evacuees in transit centers with clashes and other assistance. In Dnipro, support from the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund is helping organizations assist newly displaced people in Pavlorad. This includes providing social support, legal aid, and help with documents. Lastly, I want to turn to Haiti, horrendous crisis not too far from these shores. Our humanitarian colleagues remain deeply concerned over the escalating violence in our Tibonite department, which has triggered a new wave of displacement. The International Organization for Migration reports that nearly 15,000 people fled after armed attacks last week in the communes of Dessalines and Verret. Most of them sought safety in Post-Pierrot, a remote part of Dessalines, where they're being hosted by local families. This, you can imagine, like in many other places, is putting additional strain on host communities. Elsewhere in the Artibonite department, security situation in Leicester is worsening. Clashes erupted between gangs and local self-defense group on Saturday, leading to additional displacements and damage to civilian property. This follows a series of coordinated offensive by gangs between the 14th and 17th of July across several parts of Artibonite. In addition, casualties, preliminary reports indicate homes and vehicles were destroyed. Displaced families are in urgent need of hygiene supplies, food, emergency shelter, medical assistance, and other essential items. However, OCHA warns that ongoing insecurity continues to severely restrict humanitarian access, making it difficult to reach those in need. The latest displacement adds to an already dire situation nationwide. As we told you last week, nearly 1.3 million people in Haiti are displaced, the highest number ever recorded in Haiti due to violence and insecurity. OCHA reiterates the urgent need for scaling up humanitarian support and protection of families across the country. We continue to work with partners and authorities to improve access, mobilize additional funding, which is obviously critically needed, and ensure humanitarian assistance reached most in need, despite increasingly constrained operating environment. Basta. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. On Gaza and the escalating malnutrition, reported deaths from starvation, excuse me, what action is the Secretary General taking in terms of trying to contact Israeli officials and try and get some responses?
We are trying at all levels with Israeli officials to allow us to do the work that we're able to do and that we so desperately need to do. And I can tell you that messages have been passed on at all levels directly from the Secretary General. Yes.
The United States announced that it would withdraw from UNESCO earlier today. It would withdraw at the end of 2026. Does the Secretary General have any comment?
He does have a comment, and I read it out. I said he deeply regretted the decision. He joins Audrey Azoulay deeply regretting the decision.
I must have missed that, but I have a follow-up then. That Gideon Sarf has said that on the matter, that singling out Israel and politicization by member states must end in this and all professional UN agencies. Any comment on that?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, let's be clear. United Nations Secretariat personnel or the heads of agencies cannot be held responsible for the statements that delegations make within the various legislative bodies of this organization, nor should they be held responsible for the resolutions that member states pass. And I can tell you from UNESCO's standpoint, they have been at the forefront, and especially its Director General personally, in the fight against anti-Semitism. Lenka, and then Linda.
Thank you. Just a follow-up on UNESCO. The U.S. also said that UNESCO should revise its own culture and that they have this bias and that they have globalist agenda. Do you think, does the Secretary General think that UNESCO should try to accommodate the U.S. concerns because they had the same in 2018? Or does he think that they should try to actually, just continue whatever they are doing?
I don't really understand what a globalist agenda is. I think every member state has had some complaint about the way the organization as a whole, the whole UN agency system works. I think our comment to every member state is participate if you want to change things. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll come to you, Linda.
Hi. Following up on UNESCO too, we've been through this before, so I was wondering what is different this time in the way the organization can face this withdrawal?
UNESCO is a specialized agency in terms of the impact, the financial impact, operational impact. I would ask you, we can put you in touch with them. I can't speak to them. I can't speak for them to that, if that makes sense. Linda, then Pam.
Thank you, Steph.
I was wondering if you're familiar with, I gather there was a statement released by the editorial committee of the AFP about the state of their journalists or freelance journalists in Gaza, and that they were lamenting, warning that there are very few local journalists who are capable of reporting these days. Some of theirs are, just too weak to work. Hunger has struck them as many locals. And I was just wondering, is this something the UN has heard about? And also, is this situation, have you heard this regarding the state of journalism in Gaza?
I read the statement, and it is heartbreaking, right? And it is a reminder of the work that those journalists who have stayed in Gaza, those Palestinians who have stayed in Gaza, are putting their lives on the line to report, right? In the face of fighting and in the face of hunger. We have repeatedly called for journalists to be allowed in to Gaza to report. And I think often you all ask me questions saying, the Israelis say this, or Hamas says this, and the UN says that. If there were journalists on the ground from your organizations, perhaps those answers could be gotten by doing the work that journalists do. It's also a reminder that everyone in Gaza, every Palestinian, including our own colleagues, are suffering. Our Palestinian colleagues are hungry as well, and they have to work, and they continue to work. They continue to try to feed their fellow Gazans, and they're also trying to feed their own families.
Does the UN have any sense of the decrease in the size of the journal?
We don't have a, we don't have a head count of journalists, but I think most international news organizations have stringers or people they work with in Gaza, and I'm sure they're seeing the same thing. Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. I want to go back to the WHO incident and the attack by Israel on the WHO facilities and staff members. I won't repeat everything that Israel did, but detaining, storming the facility, the list goes on. They still have one staff member that is detained by Israel. If any other member state did this to a UN facility and UN staff, there would be major uproar. But it seems like, because Israel is doing it and because they've been doing it for 2 years now, that it's just sort of a shrug of the shoulders. Not you, not the SG, but just in general. What is the SG going to do to finally end this impunity by a member state?
The Secretary General cannot be and should not be a lone voice in the desert. United Nations staff serve on behalf of the United Nations, and the United Nations is made up of 193 member states who all signed on to the Charter, right? Who all signed on to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All those countries have to respect international, have to respect the Charter, and when others don't, they have to call them out. Okay, yes, Pam.
Thanks, Steph. A little more on UNESCO. This DG, Azoulay, increased the programs to fight anti-Semitism. Now some of the budget will be cut back because of the U.S. withdrawal. We've been through this before. They survived. How do you think they'll make up the money that they'll need to keep some of those programs going?
Look,
And then I have a separate.
again, that's a question you have to ask UNESCO. I don't think the U.S. funding of UNESCO is nowhere near the share of the Secretariat's own funding. So I have no doubt that they will continue their activities because they believe in those activities, and they will continue those.
Oh, sorry,
Yep.
just a second. On next week's two-state solution
Yep.
conference, we haven't gotten much. Now it's been postponed once. One would think maybe there was a more of an agenda or list of speakers,
Yeah.
and we haven't gotten
I don't
any.
have much more detail. I would encourage you to check with the French
And
and
do you
Saudi
expect
missions.
an
And
outcome document?
I think you have to ask the
I
organizers.
know, they don't seem to answer. Okay.
And I do expect the Secretary General to speak at the opening session.
Thank you.
Michelle Nichols.
Thank you, sir. Two quick questions. This morning when the SG was saying that the humanitarian system in Gaza is being denied conditions to function, space to deliver, and safety to save lives, who is he referring to? Who is denying this?
We've been very clear, have put in place a system that is strangling our humanitarian operations.
Thank you. And then a second question on, I know we've spoken about this topic a lot over the past year or so, but if you could just refresh us. Israel and the US say that mass aid diversion by Hamas is a key reason why Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is needed. Has the UN seen evidence of mass aid diversion by Hamas in Gaza?
No. And I think our friend Carl Scow used more words to answer that question when he was here about 10 days ago or so. All right, Sinan, and then our friend Massimo has been more patient than usual, so we'll go to him very shortly. Yes, please.
Thank you, Steph. At least 1,700 people, mainly Alawite civilians, were killed in the waves of the violence, according to Syrian Observatory Human Rights. They published this report today, and they said the most of the casualties were caused by government or government affiliated forces. And on the other hand, they said they also identified nearly 300 suspects. Any comment on that?
We've seen the report from the Syrian Human Rights Observatory, which is extremely disturbing, to say the least. As in other cases of sectarian violence recently in Syria, it is vital that the government pursue accountability, that all perpetrators, regardless of their own affiliation, whether professional or ethnic, be brought to justice. The families, the victims are entitled to justice.
Just quick follow-up, if you don't mind. Last week during the Security Council meeting, some member states also said that the Syrian government, I mean the transitional government, still didn't send any report to Security Council since they asked for a report about the casualties a few months ago. So I wonder if Secretary General has any critics for the transitional government about...
Listen, the transitional government is exactly that, and I think it came into power the way we know it came into power. It inherited a country that had been for more than 10 years in conflict. There are a lot of issues that they have to deal with. We are there to support them, but they are things that the transitional government has to produce, notably an environment in which every Syrian, regardless of their ethnicity or their religion or their past, feels safe. Okay, thank you very much.